Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Casita Coalition's Best Practice webinars. And special thanks to our Executive Director and DJ this morning, Tom Limon, for getting us all teed up. First of all, we've got a new puppy. She's decided to join the webinar. So I'm going to be very brief in the introduction and hand it off to Mayor Liccardo. It's always something with Zoom at home, what can I say? First of all, I'd like to thank our major sponsors, Union Bank and Facebook. Thank the sponsors of the webinar series, including Umpqua Bank, Building Industry Association of the Bay Area, Bridge Association of Realtors, Alan Matkins, and the Stowers Rogers team at Loan Depot. Particular thanks today to our good friends and partners at Housing Trust Silicon Valley as a sponsor for today. Housing Trust Silicon Valley is a community development financial institution working in 13 Bay Area counties and preparing to launch an ADU construction loan program to help solve some of the financial barriers to homeowners being able to develop and rent ADUs in all sorts of neighborhoods in the Bay Area. And then we're very excited about our promotional partners who are aligned with the mission of the Casita Coalition in creating more housing opportunities. The California Department of Housing and Community Development, UC Berkeley's Turner Center, the Association of Bay Area Governments, the Sacramento Area Council of Governments, Southern California Association of Governments, Build It Green, the National Association of Hispanic Real Estate Professionals, Bay Area Council, SPUR, Faith LA, the California Planning Roundtable, and Circulate San Diego. And I think it is so exciting and gratifying to see that all over California, state and local governments, regional governments are coming together on housing policy that is making a big difference in the lives of California families today with very little, if any, public subsidy. This is a very unique policy. And today was featured in Bloomberg as an example of unlocking the potential of small homes in Bloomberg City Labs. We have national awareness of California's programs. And I also found out today that the state of New York has introduced statewide ADU legislation. So the models from California are being shared nationally. And everybody on this call should be very proud to be a part of helping families take care of themselves and their communities. Couple more exciting announcements. It's been a big month for Casita Coalition. Our working groups, which are comprised of volunteer professionals, if you're interested in joining one, please reach out through our website, have been hard at work removing yet more barriers to ADUs. And we've just this week published a garage conversion resource guide that was peer reviewed by the State Department of Housing and Community Development and will be posted on their website. So this now provides statewide guidance in every community about the kinds of issues that come up in a garage conversion and how to be sure you're in compliance with state law. And then secondly, a finance resources guide. We all know who work in this area, and the Turner Center for Housing Innovation pointed out, the ability for homeowners to access capital, particularly lower income homeowners in communities of color, is a barrier to ADU spreading on a widespread basis in California. And we want to be sure that every homeowner in California has access to capital, starting with at least knowing where to go. So we published, thank you very much to the two working groups that produced these. It wouldn't have been possible without you. And thanks to our peer reviewers at Turner Center and HCD. Both of these will be published on the HCD website. And along with a Casita Coalition video that we just released that we'll be distributing statewide and nationally to senior advocacy organizations. We hope to be part of a video series, Why ADU? Why would a homeowner build an ADU? And talks in the human level about the stories of families who've helped themselves and their communities by building an ADU. So big exciting news for Casita Coalition. And the best news of today is that we have a national rock star mayor to join us today to give some introductory remarks. Sam Liccardo's in his second term as the mayor of San Jose, and he currently chairs the Big City 13 Mayors Association, helping our state recover from COVID-19 and the homeless crisis that plagues every community in California. Mayor Liccardo has been a real housing hero, taking national positions, providing op-eds that analyze the housing crisis and talks about what local governments can do. And a big force behind San Jose's very innovative ADU programs, which we look forward to highlighting today. So Mayor Liccardo, I'm a big fan, as you can tell. We're so delighted that you're here today, and thanks for joining us.
Denise, thank you so much. That was a very, very kind introduction. Just the way my mom wrote it, but thank you. And I just want to say thank you to you for being the pioneer in founding Casita Coalition and all that you have done, particularly, bills like SB 1069, a lot of great legislation that is really starting to make some headway for all of us. The cities that need to get these built, actually, it's of course the homeowners and the industry needs to get them built, but the cities need to help get the obstacles out of the way. And the work you've done at the state has just been really helpful and tremendous. So thank you, Denise, for all your great work. And congratulations to Tom Limon, who I understand is now starting up as executive director. And we look forward to a great partnership in many months and years to come. And super big shout out to a great partner in South Bay. That is the Housing Trust Silicon Valley. Noni Ramos and everyone behind them, Fatima, and everyone who works so hard to make housing and our valley more affordable for our community. So big shout out for our friends at Housing Trust and all the sponsors, Union Bank, Facebook, all you guys are awesome. Thank you for supporting. You're going to have somebody much smarter than me talking in just a couple minutes. That's Martina Davis. She's a supervising planner in our planning and building team, and she's going to tell you all about what we're doing in San Jose. I'll just give you a very quick overview from my perspective. When we started thinking about this back in 2015, 2016, we were seeing that maybe a couple dozen, what we're calling backyard homes in San Jose, but I think we all know as ADUs, a couple dozen of those would get built in any given year. And that obviously wasn't going to move the needle much on our affordable housing crisis. We started figuring out, since there's momentum building, to figure out whether or not this is something our residents would really want. So working with some outside groups, we sponsored a little survey and found that about a third of our homeowners would be very interested in building ADU if it could be made simple and financially feasible for them. So we thought we might be onto something, I should say something that all of us have been onto for some time, which is the notion that we can repurpose the very large single family spaces we have throughout our cities, particularly out here in California, to be better utilized. And what has resulted is really been tremendous from our community. We've seen the number of backyard homes increase 26-fold since that time. We went up to more than 450 backyard homes in 2019, just before the pandemic. And we launched a great website. Mackenzie Mossing on our team was leading the charge, called sjbackyards.com, to make it really easy for folks and help them understand the process. The folks over in planning and building created, I think, a very helpful program to enable builders to get pre-approved plans. That is, we now have 7 different manufacturers that have 13 pre-approved plans so that folks can see their permit and their green light to go in a day, which is what we want everyone to do, is be able to move quickly, because we know our homeowners are not developers. They're not lobbyists. They just don't want to deal with the bureaucracy. And so our team got together quickly to figure all of that out. And we're seeing a real acceleration. And with a housing measure that we passed last year, Measure E, it'll help a little bit with funding. We'll get about $40 million from that this year for affordable housing, and probably more in future years. We have carved out some of that we hope to use to help with the financing of backyard homes that can make them rent restricted in exchange for a subsidy. And so we are hopeful. That program has not yet launched, but we are hopeful to get some traction on that as we emerge from the pandemic. And we have some exciting partnerships to announce in the weeks ahead with some tech companies around how we can scale ADUs and backyard homes in San Jose. And we hope those will provide a model for other cities to follow. So we've got a lot of work underway. The reality, though, is we have really become a victim of our own success. And we've heard from a lot of folks in the industry that the process has gotten bogged down, because when we went from a couple dozen to more than 400, all of a sudden our very hardy ADU ally who has worked incredibly well, incredibly hard, Sarah, could not do it all by herself, and that we needed to scale. And so last week, council approved funding in my budget to really increase staffing to enable more folks to get through the process, because we know as we get out of this pandemic, our affordable housing crisis will again be top of mind, and we think there's going to be a lot of homeowners interested in this solution. To give you a sense of the scale of possibility in the city of San Jose, we have 130,000 single family parcels. So if we can get just 5% of those homeowners to allow ADUs to get built on their parcels, you can imagine that's a lot of homes. I think it's more north of 6,000. I got to do the math. Anyway, it's a lot of homes and that are nationally affordable. And this provides a great opportunity, certainly, for all of us to scale. We see cities like Vancouver that are doing it so well. No reason why the Bay Area shouldn't be out in front. So thank you very much for allowing me to parachute in to brag a little bit about what we're trying to do in the city of San Jose. And fortunately, Martina is here to tell you the truth. So thank you all.
Thank you so much for joining us and for those really great examples of how a city can really lead the rest of the state by taking the reins and embracing a policy that makes a big difference. So thank you so much for your leadership, and you can get back to the rest of your day, and you can ask for all the gossip from Martina later on.
I will. Thank you, Denise.
All right, goodbye.
Take care.
I'm now happy to welcome Martina Davis. Martina has been with the city of San Jose for 14 years, leading development review team and staffing various current planning function, is now the ADU ordinance and policy team, with a wealth of knowledge, because San Jose was one of the first cities in the state to really embrace ADU policies and look to ways to accelerate their development in an equitable and inclusive fashion. So we have some really great lessons to learn today from Martina. I also want to mention that Andrew Wazencroft, the senior engineer for the city of San Jose in the building plan review division, will be here as well. Hey, Andrew, nice to see you. And these two are the ADU team leads in San Jose. And I just want to echo before we get started that state ADU law made every city the victim of the success of the policy. And every city in the state is struggling to keep up with the volume. So we appreciate that San Jose in particular has robustly funded budget items to not only provide financial assistance to homeowners, but also to keep the process rolling. So we know it's a work in progress, and we thank you for that. So anyhow, why don't you guys go ahead and lead off and tell us your secret sauce in San Jose. We look forward to hearing about it.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and just share my screen now, go into my PowerPoint. And let's get started. Okay, so thank you, Denise. As Denise said, I am Martina Davis. I'm a supervising planner with San Jose Planning Division. Currently, I am the lead of our ordinance and policy team. So that means I do the zoning ordinance updates. My team does those, which has been a lot of ADU work in the last couple of years to keep up with state law and maybe go ahead of state law. I've also spent a lot of time working in our permit center, both being the planner on the counter as well as supervising. So I've got experience with this from the beginning to the end, from the in the weeds role to the policy role. So I'll be doing the presentation today. Andrew, please feel free to jump in if I say anything wrong, but I'll be talking in the presentation, and then Andrew is going to be jumping in and helping us with Q&A later today. So just jumping in really briefly, what we allow in San Jose, of course, ADUs on single family property. I just want to highlight a couple things that we do that are above and beyond state law. One of them is we do allow 2 stories. If you are thinking about doing that and your neighborhoods are like ours, who are very, very concerned about backyard privacy, we do have some standards around window placement, around placement of balconies and unenclosed staircases on the outsides facing neighbors' yards. You could check out. I'm not going to say our standards are perfect, so I wouldn't advise you maybe copy them entirely, or if you do, do some thinking and see how they work in your community. But that's something to think about. We do also allow 0-foot side and rear setbacks for single story construction. So it could be a 2-story ADU. You'd have to set the 2nd story back, but anything as 1 story can be 0. I do want to spend a moment doing some lessons learned on that. We did this change back when the state law changed to require cities to allow conversions of existing structures within the same setback as existing, right? And we figured, hey, as planners, we didn't know any better. We thought, all right, if you're going to convert the structure, why don't we just let people build new ones? By the time you convert a 1915 garage, you're probably building it fresh anyway. What's the difference, right? What we did not do very well, I will fully admit, is we did not coordinate with our development services partners, and in particular our fire department, very well on this issue. And we did kind of catch them off guard on this. And so what was happening is, A, they weren't too thrilled. In there, of course, you can mitigate a 0-foot setback. You'd do sprinklers, for example. But in their minds, being able to get a hose around the entire building is really just the safest thing. And so they weren't thrilled, but they worked with us on this. The other thing that was the problem was the communication. So again, us planners are really proud of ourselves. So we were out there just promoting it. 0 setback isn't this great? And people, yeah, I get 3 feet of my yard back. Yes. What I did not realize was that I thought that by the time they got to designers and sort of working with professionals, people were going to start to understand some of the trade-offs. Again, the sprinklers cost more money, or your neighbor doesn't have to let you into their yard to paint the ADU next year, that kind of thing. And that wasn't happening. And we were the first ones telling them that. And they were upset. Or they would submit a plan and planning says, looks great. And they get a plan check comment from fire that says this violates fire code. And they were livid. So I would say that if you are going to do this, just be careful the way you communicate it. It sounds silly, but I cannot emphasize more how much time and energy this issue has taken. We no longer just say we allow 0 setback. We say we allow you to go to less than 3 feet, but I would recommend communicating it in that way. Really communicate it as an exception, not as sort of the standard, because it really is kind of an above and beyond exception that triggers different things. Even eaves, right? You can't have eaves on your neighbor's property. People, what? You didn't tell me that, So moving on, JADUs, we follow state law. The only difference I'll say is that we did carry over that exemption for replacement parking to JADUs that are garage conversions. And the reason we did that is we were codifying JADUs around the same time we were doing an amnesty program. And the amnesty program conversation was largely around garage conversions, right? We know we have all these garage conversions to ADUs out in our community, and we want to help people come out of the woodwork and legalize them and make sure they're safe. But from our experience, when people come and tell us, I've converted the garage to an ADU, it's more likely going to be a JADU. Chances are a good chance they're not going to have a full kitchen. Maybe they share the bathroom. It's definitely a 2-car garage, is usually under 500 square feet. It's attached. So we said, you know what, to make our amnesty program successful and to not have to just say no to people, that's not our goal here. We went ahead and carried that exemption over. And we do allow that not just for amnesty. If you wanted to convert your garage into a JADU, we don't require the replacement parking. I would say probably 99% of homes in San Jose have 2-car, driveways. So practically speaking, there is replacement parking, but we don't require it. I'll be talking about tiny homes on wheels in a moment, so I'm not going to focus on that. And then multifamily properties, we do just follow the state law. We figured let's get a sense of how it's going, do some lessons learned, and see if we need to do some adjustments for our local conditions on those provisions. I would say so far, just given the COVID year, I don't know that we have lessons learned on that yet. And you can find all of our requirements on our website, sanjoseca.gov/ADUs. So just real quick, highlighting what the mayor said. So I chose to show permits final. The actual permits received is usually much higher, and it kind of follows, right? But you can see how we've jumped. We've jumped from 19 in a year to 258. And even during the pandemic, we held pretty solidly. If you want to know these jumps between 17, 18, those big jumps, I would say those were mostly parking changes we made, particularly around the replacement parking or where that ADU parking space can be. Those alone unlocked so much potential. And I'm not even going to talk about those because guess what? The state requires you to have those same standards now. So, the state kind of caught up with us with that, but you can see the jump. There were some other changes that we made, I think, that explain the jump, but that one I would say is the top reason was the parking. Okay, so I'm going to move on to tiny homes on wheels as ADUs. So we call them ADUs because they're parked in rear yards. So that's the kind of framework people understand them as. If you go and ask the state, are these the ADUs under the state law, ADU law? No, they're ADUs. We call them that locally. I will just start with this statement, is that there is not a huge demand for these, right? At least not yet. It's to be seen. I don't know if there ever will be, but if you're going to do a tiny home on wheel ordinance, don't expect that it's going to solve your housing crisis and you're going to see a ton of these coming into your community immediately. The reason that we did this ordinance is that we were approached by the San Jose Conservation Corps and Charter School, who is a school associated with the AmeriCorps. And they found that they had a lot of students who were experiencing housing instability. And so they came up with this program where the students actually worked to build the tiny homes on wheels. I got a picture of their factory right there. Thank you guys for that. Learn trade skills, it's paid job training, right? Very valuable skills. We all know we need more people in construction. And then the school will work with local homeowners to park the tiny home on wheels in their yard at no cost. And then the students can live in the tiny home on wheels and pay an affordable rent to the homeowner. So the homeowner gets some income, students get a home, students get job skills, win, win, win. So they approached us and they said, you know, the only problem with this program is your ordinance doesn't allow it. And we said, well, we're going to fix that problem real quick. So we did. We very quickly adopted a tiny home ordinance. I think it's to be seen if this takes off in a larger sense. To me, doing the ordinance for this program alone was worth it. And perhaps they'll expand to not just be for their students. I could see something like this being a part of an affordable housing portfolio for a lot of places. So how did we do it? I just first want to dispel a couple kind of rumors out there. I've heard that San Jose had to get San Jose specific enabling legislation to do this. And that's a little bit of a confusion of two things that were going on. We did not need enabling legislation. And in fact, we were not the first people who did this ordinance. We actually copied several others. And if you look at everyone's tiny home ordinance across the state, they're almost word to word the same, because I believe we all just copied each other's. And I think Fresno was first, so I think we all just copied Fresno's. I promise you, I copied someone else's and adjusted it for the local city. So feel free to copy ours. The enabling legislation you might be thinking of was legislation around tiny home villages on public property as bridge housing communities. So we did do that. We had some Caltrans sites with these bridge housing communities, and that legislation was for that, but it had nothing to do with tiny homes on wheels. The other thing that's out there, and this was brought to my attention when we first started talking about this ordinance, is that there is this bulletin from HCD Bulletin 2016-01 that was sent to all building officials, that if you just scan it, it seems like it's saying you can't do this and it's really scary and you're going to get in a lot of trouble if you do. And I first I was like, oh no, how did these other cities do this? But when you delve into it, what it's actually saying is it's saying that you can't just allow tiny homes to be their own animal. You can't just say, well, that's a cute little house you built, looks good. You have to fit it within an existing housing regulatory framework. So these are the options that they lay out in that memo. And if you allow it as one of these, then it's okay. If you just say, hey, build your own tiny home and we're not going to plan check it per anything like this, that's when you have a problem. San Jose went with the RV or the park trailer specifically option. And as far as I could tell from my research, so did all of the other cities who have this type of an ordinance, went with this park trailer. So they are effectively, they are recreational vehicles. That is really what they are. What San Jose allows, here's a picture of the interior of the Conservation Corps, is very nice, really well set up little tiny home. We allow them on single family lots in the rear yard. If you're thinking about doing this and you don't have any post or pre-World War II housing stock with driveways to detached garages, you probably don't want to put a rear yard standard in there, or maybe it's not something that works for you, just because if you can't get it to the rear yard, you have to get a crane. It defeats the purpose. We don't require additional parking. We have 4-foot setbacks. I've been talking to building. They may be more comfortable with 5 foot. At the same time, there's trade-offs, right? We want to ensure safety. So I have an asterisk on our setbacks because we're going to be looking at that in the field and just kind of feeling it out. This is a really new thing. So maybe we might want to adjust it to 5. I don't know, to be determined. So you know how I mentioned their RVs, and you might be thinking what I was thinking, like, look, our community is going to be fine with cute little cottages on wheels, but we don't want to let someone, have someone just be able to go to the junkyard, buy a junk RV, stick it in the backyard and annoy all the neighbors. So how do you prevent that? Because they are RVs, right? There's some simple design standards, and I did not make these up, copy them. They're pretty standardized, and this isn't all of them. There's a couple more, but if you do these design standards, if you think about it, these things are what are characterized as what you would think is an RV, right? So just some simple design standards alone. You don't have to spell out not RV. You just, put these standards. No rounded windows, right? Like think about what you see in RV parks. They usually have those rounded windows. And then finally, the permit process for these. So one of the nice things about this is because we went with this park trailer option, they get third-party certification. So what that does mean is that people who self-build them, they either have to get this certification or we can't permit it, right? So, think about that. But we require plumbing and electrical permits only. So pretty simple. We do require that they are connected to sanitary, sewer, power, and water. Those are flexible connections. Sewer was probably our biggest concern. We are aware they can be off grid, but we just kind of don't trust people to adequately dispose of sewage in a city. So we do want them connected to sewer. And if you want more information on them, on our website, we have a checklist that goes through all of the requirements and process for those. So please feel free to check that out. And oh shoot, I forgot that's a link. Okay. I made it a link, so when we share this presentation, you guys can click on it. Anyway, so now I'm going to talk about our process and communication improvements, and I'm going to end with the talk about our pre-approved ADU program that the mayor mentioned. So I would say this is, as we all know, cities, we're still trying to scramble, recover from moving our operations online. Not everyone's got a ton of budget right now. And so if you want to make improvements and you don't have the capacity to do the really big bang stuff like a financing program, I think communication and process improvements are definitely the best bang for your buck. And in particular, keep in mind that your ADU audience is uniquely almost always homeowners. And homeowners, what we hear constantly is, I don't even know where to start. So if you can say, here's where you start, this is where all your information is, and you can break down the silos between those departments and really work to do interdepartmental information. It shouldn't just be a planning site. It shouldn't just be a building site. You shouldn't say, I'll go see fire site because, go through all those sprinkler directives to find the one you need. I promise you, your customer does not know the difference between planning and building, and they do not care. They just need to know what they need to know. So spending the time to break those silos down and consolidate your information in one place is just well worth it. As we mentioned, dedicated staff, we're staffing up right now. We already more informally try to have dedicated staff. I talked to my colleague who supervises the planners who review the permits. She says she does have one planner assigned to ADUs just for consistency. And you can assign someone who's particularly good at working with homeowners, who's got that customer service, drive in them and that ability to kind of really work with people who are maybe starting from scratch. Not everyone's very super great at that. So you can try to focus your ADU staff on people who are and who enjoy that work. And yeah, mentioning the ADU ally. So we did create this ADU ally position. The idea is the ADU ally is the person who, if you don't know where to start or you're stuck, can go to. As the mayor mentioned, we are a victim of our own success. I think it took one day from us announcing the position for her to find out how many voicemails our phones can take before they shut off. So I will say this is what we probably didn't do as well. And I would recommend you think about if you're going to do some sort of an omnibus ally position is to just be very, very clear about who's supposed to use that and what it's for. We definitely, when we first promoted it, especially, it was like, ADU ally can answer all your questions. The ADU ally is not actually a technical expert. And that's kind of the beauty of the position, is that it's somebody who isn't stuck in their little silo of building code or planning or whatnot. It's someone who's just really good at process, working with customers, that kind of thing. And so to have that outside is very outside sort of look on your processes and systems, and someone who's kind of coming at it from the homeowner's perspective is very valuable. But when you say everybody contact her for everything, I mean, she was getting like really complex building code questions immediately. And then she would route them to the building staff. And then people would say, well, what's the point? I could have just asked the building staff. So I would say, communicate that, be realistic about what you can accomplish with one person or however much resources you have. For us, we were only able to get one person. We are now, as the mayor said, doing budget add for additional allies. So hopefully that should help a lot. But that would be my definitely takeaway. And it was never our intention for that person to be the person you have to start with. It was more supposed to be, I don't know where to start, can you help me? But if you know what you're doing, you don't have to work with the ADU ally. It's not a requirement. So I will end, oh yeah, not quite end yet. I just want to show you our website real quick. So here's sanjoseca.gov/adus, friendly URL, super easy. You can tell people go there, one-stop shop. You can see we consolidated all of our information. We've got even the fire requirements. You used to have to go through like 30 pages of really complicated fire system requirements to find what you needed to do for an ADU. It's all there in one place for the customer to use. And one other thing I'll highlight that, if you want to export this and copy ours, please feel free. We started out, we used to have a zoning checklist, and the zoning checklist, the real purpose of it, I'm going to be very honest, was to help people understand that our zoning was way too restrictive and you couldn't do an ADU. So it kind of was like, oh, we'll walk you through the checklist. And the answer was almost no by the time you got to the end. But then we changed and we started, changing our ordinance, and the answer ended up being yes by the time you got to the end of our zoning checklist. And that's when we really realized that zoning only gets you so far. That, again, your homeowner or your customer who's doing this doesn't necessarily know the difference between planning and building or fire. So if you get to check, yes, your setbacks are adequate on this form, you think you're good, and then, maybe building says, oh, you've got a problem, or there's an easement, or there's a flood zone. And so we spent some time to expand this checklist. So now it is universal. It's long, it's 4 pages long, but it really is for the person who wants to do their homework and really make sure this is something they know what they're getting into before they work with a professional, or for the professional to go through and just make sure they hit all of the things that, we find catch people later in the game. You want them to catch it first, not after they've submitted plans and have to revise those plans. So the checklist can be very, very helpful for that. And then I will end with my favorite, and I would love to see other cities export this idea too, because this has been just so great. And we've gotten a lot of positive feedback from the private sector as well on our pre-approved ADU program. So, here's the thing, ADUs, a small backyard, especially detached, this is for detached only, they can be sort of standardized. And a lot of you see companies that are doing prefab or modular. So they're building the same one over and over again. And we thought, why do we need to plan check the same thing over and over again? That doesn't make any sense. How can we facilitate getting these done quicker? So what we do is we have a program totally optional where designers, or we call them vendors, can submit plans. This is for plan check, and they submit a plan without the site specific details. So they submit everything short of that. Architectural, we get structural, Title 24, planning is going to look at it, fire is going to look at it. You can tell us you want to pre-approve a 0-foot setback condition. We'll pre-approve that. Let us know. And so we do the plan check up front. We do the hard lifting. We issue the master plan approval, and we post on our website the list of vendors. We post how many plans each vendor has. We post their contact info and a link to their website. And I will say that one of the beauties of this is, and I got this story, thank you, from Andrew, is that, we get a lot of people coming in and saying, hey, I gave this person 90% upfront to design my ADU. It's not going anywhere, or I can't get a hold of them. I need to get this finished. My mother's moving in. Can you please recommend someone that can get an ADU done in San Jose? And we cannot recommend people, right? We're not allowed to do that. But this is a good way that we can kind of direct people to people who we know. This is a factual, they have gotten these pre-approved plans. And so if you want to get this done and you don't mind using the pre-approved plan, we can promise you it's going to be faster and you're going to have success with this. So that is the beauty of it, is that when the customer comes in to get their permit, we've already done the hard work. We've done the Title 24. We've done the structural. All we're looking at is your site-specific conditions. And because it's so much an easier review, we are now back to being able to do them at over-the-counter appointments. So they're virtual now, but you can get your permit reviewed and approved in 1 day. This article I found from Curbed, How to Build a Home in San Jose in 12 Weeks, that was about a pre-approved ADU, and that actually included the 1 day permit process within those 12 weeks, and they called that out. So it works, and we're very, very excited about it. Our designers like it. It makes it easier for them, and they can have, they can do more customers. They don't need to go through the whole plan check every single time for the same thing. And I'll just end with showing, I got screenshots from all our pre-approved vendors' websites, just kind of show you. I think my last thing I'll end with is that you don't really need to promote ADUs so much anymore. You know, that is out there, that is done. People want to build ADUs, and there is a huge industry of people who want to help people build ADUs. You in the city don't have to do that anymore. You have to help them with what you can help them with, which is the permit process. And so this is a good example where if you look at these websites, you know, you got this with Mayberry Workshop promoting it of multiple uses. Acton ADU had a news release. They were really proud to be the first one with 3 pre-approved ADUs. They're not the only one with 3 anymore, but they were the first one with 3. This one, Open Remodel, you know, you scroll down on their website. Oh, I'm in San Jose. I want the pre-approved. Let me see. Here's the nice pre-approved 2-bed, I think it's a 2-bedroom, you know, that you can see. City is not going to be able to produce fancy, nice plans like that. We could, but you know, why? Other people are doing it. We just want to facilitate you through the process. And then just ending, I wanted to show them all. For fairness, you know, we've got a huge variety, right? You've seen the 2-bedroom ones, you've seen the little studios, very modern, more traditional. And then my personal absolute favorite is this architect, Jay Krishner, it's getadu.com. On their services listed, they even list, if your property is not in San Jose, I will do the additional plans for you as an additional service. So just upfront saying it's easier in San Jose. I don't have to do as much work for you. And I can only assume the additional services cost additional money. So I would love that to be able to go away, because all of our neighbors have pre-approved plans and they don't need any of those extra plans that San Jose does not require. So with that, I am done and I'm looking forward to Q&A.
Thank you so much, Martina. There's so much in there that provides really great lessons learned. And thank you for your candor about things you tried that maybe didn't work as well as you thought they would. That's super helpful to other people trying to figure out where to go with this. One of the questions that came up in the Q&A, and then before we get into the details, let me introduce the other folks on our Q&A panel. So I'm joined by Jared Basler, fellow Casita Coalition board member from San Diego, and make sure the full regional spread of the state is represented. Jared goes by the moniker, the godfather of Granny Flats, and was a big force behind San Diego's really great best practice programs, which we highlighted previously, and also one of the founders of Maximal Space that provides ADU services to homeowners. And then also Fathia McCauley, the Chief Lending Officer for Housing Trust Silicon Valley, who I actually would like both Jared and Fathia to just give a brief overview of your work so folks get to know you a little bit, and then we can get into the Q&A. Jared, do you want to start, and then we'll go to Fathia? Fathia,
Sure.
You're also muted, so you can unmute yourself.
Yeah. So like Denise said, my name is Jared Basler, co-founder of Maximal. Prior to joining with Maximal, I had my own design firm here in San Diego, designed and permitted over 100 ADUs here throughout the San Diego region, even a couple up in LA area. Got the first one through Palm Springs back when we had to fight through city attorneys. So I bring a lot of the kind of boots on the ground experience, the Casita Coalition board. I also have ADU Coalition down here in San Diego. That's a committee of our local AIA chapter that I chair as well. So that's a little bit about me. Fathia.
Great. And while we're doing intros, I forgot that we were going to do a little poll today to find out who all of you are. So while we're starting the Q&A, you'll see the poll crop up on the screen. So if you're interested in that, that would be great information for us. And there's about 200 folks on the call today, as I understand it. So thank you all for joining. Fathia.
Great. I was just answering the poll question first. Hi, everyone. I'm Fathia McCauley. I'm with the Housing Trust Silicon Valley. Really excited to be part of this conversation. Housing Trust is a CDFI, Community Development Financial Institution. We're located in San Jose. Our office is, but we cover 13 counties in the Bay Area, from as far north as Napa, Sonoma, to as far south as Monterey, Santa Cruz, and as far east as San Joaquin. Our ADU construction loan program is soon to be released. And I've been saying that for a bit, because not only are we at shelter in place, but the intricacies of trying to find a way to creatively and efficiently finance ADUs takes some time. Absolutely. So what we have created is proposed is a 3-year ADU construction loan program. that would be interest only for the first year and principal and interest for the second and third year. And the idea for our loan program is that the proposed tenant of the ADU would be a low to moderate income person making up to 120% AMI. So there's a wide range of what that could look like, and it could be a family member as well. But ultimately, just a couple things I'll say just really quickly. So Housing Trust embarked on this process, I believe, in 2017. Since we're heavily in the Santa Clara County, specifically in San Jose, a very single family home oriented community. How do we create affordable housing in a kind of a quicker way and look at creating affordable housing in the space that's available right now? And get homeowners to be part of the solution as well. Sorry, just the poll. Well, if you want me to take a break, Denise, while you answer the polls, or is this the answers for the poll results?
I have not had a chance to digest the poll yet, so we'll come back to that in a minute.
Okay.
But I did want to hit a couple questions and then open it up to folks on the panel. One of the questions was, have you thought about other policies to promote equity in homeownership? And if you go to the Casita Coalition website, you will find that our mission statement embraces all these small housing forms that create more equitable, more inclusive neighborhoods. And I invite you to explore our website, which has a lot of information about the ways we think small housing creates better inclusion and equitable outcomes. One of the specific San Jose questions was about one of our favorite topics, fees. It's really great to simplify the process, but part of the cost stack is the fee stack. So Martina or Andrew, do you want to talk a little bit about fees in San Jose?
Yeah, I'll start it out, and then Andrew, I think you can jump in if there's anything to add. So our fees, they vary obviously based on what you are going to build. And Andrew, do you know what's our current? Here's what I will say is that our only impact fee that we've always charged was school impact fees and park impact fees. And our park impact fees have always been a fraction of what they would be for a non-ADU. And so when we did look at that state law change that said you can't charge fees on ADUs 750 or less, and then the proportional for the larger ADUs, our fees were already below that proportional threshold. So I would say, I know everyone's not going to agree with me. I'd say in relation from what I've heard from other jurisdictions, our fees were not outrageously high. We definitely always want to reduce them. I think our estimate we would give people was between 8,000 to 15,000, but Andrew, please again, correct me if I'm wrong on that one. And that was usually inclusive of your park fee. So if you're doing the smaller unit, you're not going to be paying that. Yeah, I guess I'll leave it at that. I know we did try to do a program where we were going to either reduce or not have you pay fees up front if you were going to rent the ADU as an affordable unit. And we just could not make the logistics of that work. And I don't know the details, but it fell apart in the details that we really worked very hard on that. And we didn't find it feasible. And it's because our fees pay for the staff. They literally pay for the plan review staff. We are entirely fee funded in the building department. And so if we don't get the money coming in, we don't have the staff. So I think it kind of fell apart at that standpoint.
And just one other thing to note, the 2020 suite of ADU laws, which the Casita Coalition supported and many of our members were instrumental in bringing about, disallows impact fees on ADUs smaller than 750 square feet. So that would be park fees, for example, transportation fees that are charged by the local agency. It doesn't address utility hookups. It doesn't address school fees, which is governed by a separate body of law, but it does allow cities to do cost recovery because you can't approve plans if you don't have staff sitting there waiting to receive them. So with that, I want to invite Fathia to join us and maybe ask some of your questions from the Housing Trust Silicon Valley perspective of your good friends and partners in San Jose.
Sure. Thanks so much, Denise. One of the things that has been phenomenally, to me, exciting about this process is the ADU Ally And I'm just curious as to, I know you talked a lot about like somebody who was able to work with homeowners. How have you found it? Do you think you're going to be expanding this role, or have you found that, well, I think you were talking a little bit about it, Martina, but I would love to hear more about the role, because we have really found it to be helpful to be able to refer homeowners to the ally.
Yeah, I mean, and again, Andrew, I'm going to make you help me answer this one because you work with her more now on a day-to-day basis. But yeah, I think the idea that that position is great because, as I said, homeowners, they don't know where to start. And it is people's natural instinct that you want to talk to somebody. Sending people to a website is good, but there's a point to where I just want to call somebody who can actually say, yep, you're reading the right thing. You're on the right webpage even. Right. And so from that, I think it's been very, very successful. Again, the biggest issue has been in a city of 1 million people with as many single family homes as we have, keeping up with the demand has been, I would say, the biggest issue with that position, and probably the only issue. I always wanted to joke, we need to clone Sarah and have 1 million Sarah clones running around. Anything to add, Andrew?
No, I agree. It's definitely a role we're looking forward to expanding on. Of course, with financial constraints, we haven't been able to do that at this time. And the development of our program has changed prior to COVID, during COVID, and into today. Our goal at the time prior to COVID was providing a service where applicants could either email or walk in person. The old way of doing things, which just seems a long time ago. But you could come into City Hall and our ADU ally and others, myself and other inspectors and planners and public work officials could help answer specific questions as needed. And then unfortunately, due to COVID, things moved to electronic means. And we had to work on that as well, on how to handle the volume. And in the early stages of COVID, we had to funnel everything through ADU ally due to personnel resources. And so added tasks that she wouldn't have to have done in the past, such as scheduling and outreach, were now having been taken care of by her or myself or a few others because of the loss of the call center, let's say, and our online system not being capable of handling those types of requests. We've spent a lot of time and resources in the last 6 months to update those other functionalities to be able to draw her attention to what's really her primary task, and is helping applicants with general questions: where to go, who you should be in contact with, how to go through our webpage, where to find the resources and documentation or information that would help you to decide if you can even produce it or be eligible for an ADU, or if you have more specific questions, who to go to. So in the last month or so, we've created an online portal where you could schedule for an intake now for ADU, so we can take that away from having to be her day-to-day basis. We have our online email questionnaire service where you could reach out to an inspector or to a planner or to, again, public works or fire. So we're trying to get back to how it was prior to COVID, but we agree that with the impact of state assembly bills, Senate bills, the ever-growing favor of ADUs, the pure volume we're seeing is starting to even creep to where what we've done in the past is still not capable of maintaining the volume. And our goal is to evolve and expand. And we're super happy now that we have her as a true city employee under that designation of an ADU ally, and the future goal is to have another one. And then we're always listening to applicants with what they feel that we could do as a better for the department and for the service to try to expedite the timely of both plan check and response, and we're trying to do that. We honestly are, and it's just an ever-changing atmosphere for all, for applicants, for city officials, for contractors, for builders, for all. So.
Thank you for that. Jared, we want to make sure we bring you in here. Did you have questions
So
that you want to ask him?
Yeah. So one thing that I really appreciate and kind of am upset because you took all the feedback we gave you a couple of days ago and just answered everything in your presence. So I really appreciate how you guys have set up the pre-approved program. We talked about that a little bit. there's some questions in the chat about how that kind of works and differentiates itself. So first thing I wanted to ask is, the program is something, it's a continually open program, so additional architects can join the program. Is that correct?
Correct. It's an ever expanding program, and that was the goal. We want to have a variety of different architects, vendors, engineers to be able to provide the service to general public. We want a variety of different ADUs to be able to be approved and produced in construction. We don't want to just have a one shape, one fit for everyone, and that's the goal. And I understand other jurisdictions have approached that direction. This was just something we decided through guidance with the mayor and city council and internally through the departments, that it was best for our city and the people that live in our city.
Yeah, and cities have caught on, and so there's, you know, LA being the most recent one that just launched a program that's very similar. So congratulations on that. One question, it always comes up in these talking about pre-approved programs, is how it works, specifically with homeowners. Do they come download the plans for free from your website, or do you set prices? Or you guys want to just talk about that a little bit so that there's some clarification?
That's a great question. And we are internally updating our webpage to help address these questions, because things have changed, of course, throughout time. And I do advise anybody, for general questions, we have through our City of San Jose Building Department webpage, we have a section primarily for accessory dwelling units where we talk about the amnesty program, we talk about plan review and permit process, fees, general questions, and let alone the AD pre-approved program. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the pre-approved program in the sense that we work, and it's touching base on what Martina started off earlier in the conversation, that we as a jurisdiction don't have the right to advise someone to go with vendor A or contractor B, but we are able to have a web page that shows that we have worked with these individuals, and we can accredit that they have a pre-approved ADU, I should say, that is going to be permitted through the City of San Jose with certain boundary conditions, which I discussed with the vendor or the design team, that there's a limitation on what we can do in our pre-approved program. And we highlight that on our webpage. But we don't actually own the rights to the drawings per se. We don't get involved with the fees between an applicant and the vendor. That's where we advise the vendor to have an outreach program to all applicants. So we provide their information, their contact information, how an applicant can reach out to them, and then instigate that communication with them. And we leave it to the vendor to work with the applicant as they see best, work out all internal items. And then when they come to an agreement, which we always hope they do, they then notify myself or ADU Ally, and they say, hey, look, we have a potential client. We want to schedule an intake appointment through your express or expedited review program, where we then create an environment through a Zoom meeting similar to this, and we will review the provided plans. They are, of course, site specific, because they are dependent on the site, of course, for that applicant. But then we do a conformance review. We look at to make sure that everything that we've done per se for the heavy lifting is the same. And now we can primarily just focus on how we're meeting the ordinance. Are we meeting the fire separation requirements for both building and fire? And if there are any other items that may be unique for that certain lot. So that's the idea. We don't own anything from a technology or technical perspective. It's more that we agree we've approved the system, but it still belongs to the vendors, and the vendors are going to be do the lifting and the involvement with the applicants. And it's just that they're going to work with them to get them their permit. They initiate the permitting process, achieve and receive the permits, and then certain vendors do the construction. Some do not, but they have contractors that are affiliated with that can help the client then go from there.
Yeah. You're doing a great job, by the way, just teeing up the next question that I'm going to ask. It's like, this is not, pre-planned, but you talked about how, there's site specific things that have to go on, each of these, even on a pre-approved plan. It's not just download it and you're building. There are site specific things. And one of the questions in the chat was specifically regarding what kind of numbers you're seeing as far as homeowners that are going through the pre-approved process versus a site-specific custom process?
In my opinion, not enough. And that's something we're working on internally to try to expand and get and outreach our program to homeowners to be aware that this is a direction you could go down. It's advantageous in time from a cost perspective in terms of plan review and permit cost. Certain items we cannot really touch if per se parkland fees or school fees are triggered, as the team has brought up earlier. But it is a direction I hope homeowners can see as being favorable if they really don't know where they're starting. You're going to be able to go down this process with an expert in a variety of different facets that understands how to work with the city of San Jose and achieve a permit for you and explain to you what needs to be done through A to Z. And so percentage-wise, I can't really give you a true number because it's, of the 240, let's say, that were finalized, I would say it would be around maybe 10% at this time. And it's through the last fiscal year. But, and that's what I want. We want, and I hope homeowners would want to use this program. We want to see more of them because it's a great avenue. It helps alleviate the volume for us as well. That if we can have more projects go this avenue where we can do an expedited review, it frees up the normal regular plan reviews for a variety of different other things. So I want to see it being utilized more, and we're working on that to try to expand and outreach. And we take any advice that we can get on doing that would be great. But right now we're doing public blasts through social media. We're trying to update our website and have direct links. We're trying to be involved as such with the coalition and outreach programs. But that's what we want. We want to see it expand. And just to throw this out there as well, it's not just for ADUs. We can do single family homes as well. It's the primary use is through ADUs because of our local jurisdiction. There isn't much resources to be able to purchase an undeveloped land and build single family homes. So its primary impact is through ADUs at this time.
Yeah. And I promise, Denise, that I'm not gonna keep cutting you off, and I will let you ask a question. I would just love to see those numbers over time. And, as we, the purpose of this is best practices. And, one of the things that you guys did really great in the presentation is actually, your feedback on things that haven't worked yet. So really understanding those numbers is really great. I love that you included permits finalized because that's a much better metric to look at. But yeah, I'm certainly looking forward to see how the pre-approved program continues to evolve.
Let me just add one thing. I actually called one of the vendors, asked them how it was going from their perspective. And it was some vendor I had another connection with that I was talking about. Anyway, but they do kind of high-end, expensive, big fancy ADUs. And so they have some of the bigger pre-approved models. And they were saying they want their customers to use it, but their customers want customized. Yeah. So I would say that that's going to be the biggest thing, is really kind of helping homeowners understand, is the trade-off of that customized worth it for you? They've been finding that for their customer base, at least, I want the windows in this place, and what's structural, that kind of thing. That, and they have the larger units, and they said, it's harder than you might think to fit them in a lot of backyards. Well, that's where I don't want to remove that tree. That's where my garden is. There's a pool, that kind of stuff. So I don't know. I'll be really interested to see the numbers too. I suspect we'll get probably more of the smaller units and the modular or the prefab or whatever through that program. But yeah, we're really excited to track those numbers as well.
While we're kind of talking about cost, one of the questions is, what is an ADU cost in San Jose? So maybe, Thea, that's something you can talk about as the lender. You're designing a program to get people enough money to actually pay for what it costs. Maybe you can talk a little bit about the fact that the cost of the ADU, it's hard to get a full loan for because of the lack of comps, just as a sort of second generation problem once you do regular.
But that is the answer, is that the price varies, so we have our proposed construction loan program has a maximum loan amount of $200,000. And that is for us, as a CDFI, again, we're not a bank. We're a community development financial institution. That's the maximum at this moment that we're comfortable with lending, and our loan would be in second position behind the homeowner's existing mortgage. That said, I have seen, I started speaking on panels on ADUs about a year and a half ago. And the cost that I saw was maybe around, I think I've seen on the low end, this is for stick built, low end maybe 210. On the higher end, it's really the sky's the limit, because as Martina said, you've got homeowners who've decided they're like, well, you know what, we want this, and so they're looking at something a little bit bigger. And so in terms of the gap, that's something that we're exploring, how could that gap be filled? And so the good part is that we're not the only ones thinking about this. So we've had other meetings with other entities and agencies that are very interested in that gap. And I understand that Cali Cafe has a grant program, and that's for pre-construction costs. And I think it's $10,000. I think anybody can apply right now. They're doing a pilot in Clovis. So I think that the idea, when I looked at the income limits, and what does the income limits have to do with the whole cost for Cali Cafe? They're a state agency, so they're trying to figure out how to make this equitable. And they actually used a pretty high upper limit for all the counties, for different counties in California. But you did the great part about our loan program is that once we have our number, then we'll work with the homeowner and find out what their gap is. What do they want to do? Martina, to your question or to your comment about prefab, do they want to do a prefab ADU? We're trying, I think that everyone's trying to figure out how to economize with this kind of setup and also accelerate the production. So I think that we're kind of in the middle right now, and I'd love to hear maybe. I know, Jared, you're not you're not a panelist, you're an interviewer, but I'd love to hear maybe Maxible's thought on cost a bit, if that's okay, Denise. I'd love to. I feel like you have some answers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we really see it. It's very regional. ADUs are one of those things that we always tell people. It's like, buying in bulk. You can't buy in bulk in ADUs because, you can't go to Costco and get that giant, pack of toilet paper. You're only getting one roll of toilet paper. So when we look at the bill, you still have your in there. It doesn't matter if it's 400 square feet or, you have a lot of cheap spaces. So at least, but for specific costs, really see that it's varying across the state regionally, where we have areas down here that are building for on the low end less than 200 a square foot. Very rare, but there are pockets where we're seeing that happen. And then up in the Bay Area, we're seeing stuff up into $400 and $500 a square. So it's really varied across the state. And the biggest issue that we're seeing as far as financing goes is exactly what you're trying to solve, but as the kind of bridge loan, because homeowners that don't have the equity or don't have can't access specialty loan products. It's something that right now it's the financing options that have historically been available are really only available for people who have a lot of equity. And so it's not first-time home buyers. And so seeing what you guys are doing is really encouraging, because it's opening up new avenues for homeowners that we talk about it being housing equity, having the products and the loan products to back that up and provide that is what's most important.
Thanks, Jared.
That's great. So a couple questions about the details of San Jose's program. First of all, I think you covered it initially, but the ADU Ally, is it a gatekeeper? You can't get in the queue until you talk to the ADU Ally, or is it a helpful step and not everyone has to talk to them? And then the second question is, what are you guys doing about ADUs and front yard setbacks?
I'll let Andrew answer the first one. I'll do the second.
I'll do this. Okay, no problem. At this time, no, she's not a gatekeeper per se, because if your team's ready to submit a set of plans, again, we have a process now. You're able to do that through our website, to schedule online for an intake submittal. And then you would be reaching out to her for general questions or understanding per se. So she is not just a true gatekeeper. At one point she was during COVID. She was because of just the resources, but we're trying to expand that role so she doesn't have to do all facets related to ADUs anymore.
And so for the second
Martina.
question, in short, right now, we are not doing anything around ADUs in front yards. We do not allow them, and we're not actively looking at that right now. Just something to think about from a technical standpoint, I'll tell people is, I don't know if San Jose is unique. I suspect we're not, but between probably the 40s and like the 80s, every single development was subdivided with a building setback line easement in the front yard. And that easement is an easement regardless of what your zoning says. And so I will say that I'm not saying San Jose will never look at this or anything like that, but even if we were to change our zoning and say you can do it in the front yard, we're going to run into homeowners are going to have to go to the city council to vacate those easements. And we've been through this with the attorney. Can we just ignore them? Is there an easy vacation process? Even the easy vacation process goes through the council. So just heads up on that, everybody, that it's really probably, if your community is like ours, it's going to be a two-step process for it's not just your zoning. Either you need to proactively release those building setback line easements because the city is the public is the holder of those easements, is the city, or you'll need to make the homeowners go through that process. So definitely something to check out.
Great. Sophia, did you have other questions that you wanted to ask the panel? I wouldn't want to be mindful of our time. We've got about 7 more minutes for Q&A.
Curious about garage conversions and how, had you thought about, do your pre-approved plans include garage conversions?
At this time, no. We are working on a bulletin to help homeowners understand the major items that are required to be looked at or updated for garage conversion. We are in communication with vendors that are interested into working towards garage conversions at this time, but nothing official on our website, or I could say is completely ready to go. But it is a mainstream that we see. A lot of garage conversions are an interest to homeowners. And I did see that there was a discussion about what a JADU is, or a question. For those that are unaware of that, there's a new language from the state. It's called a junior accessory dwelling unit, where I believe it's Assembly Bill 68, but there's a variety of different assembly bills out there that give code regulations for the states of what they believe a JADU should be. In hindsight, we also have that in our ordinance. At this time, it's usually just a space that's within an existing single-family home that has a limit of up to 500 square feet. You can convert that space into habitable space, i.e. a junior accessory dwelling unit. There is no fire separation requirements. You are allowed to have a full kitchenette. You have to have access to both the main home and have an egress component directly out of this converted space. You are able to share facilities such as bathing and for laundry, so sanitary items. And that's kind of an idea that a lot of homeowners are starting to think of as an option. It's a little bit less evasive than a typical garage conversion, which would follow the standards of an ADU. But then there are state requirements, which Martina could probably touch on further than I, regarding deed restrictions and what a homeowner can do if they have a JADU. But so garage conversions are a large number of our intakes on a weekly basis, purely on the fact that homeowners feel it's easier to do than to, and they may not have the resources or space to construct a new unit outside of the main home. But yeah, so it's definitely a growing area, and we're working on trying to provide more information to the general public on what we're looking for as a set of minimums.
Thank you, Andrew. I did see.
Great.
Oh, Denise, I did see one of the questions was asked about parking requirements for existing single-family dwellings and a new ADU. Can either Martina or Andrew speak to that?
Yeah, so if it's a garage for a garage conversion under the state law, we don't require, and we did this before the state law, I just want to give us credit for that, but we don't require replacement parking for garage conversions. We may not, anyway. And then for the ADU parking space, you either can meet one of the state law exceptions for that one parking space for the ADU. A lot of our community does, just simply based on the access to transit, for example. And then if you can't meet one of those exceptions, you can use the driveway for your parking space. So if you have a driveway, which just about everyone does, you can build an ADU because your parking's taken care of. Chances are you also made an exception.
And I was just, it's not a question here, but I was really curious about those, just quick question, Denise. I was just wondering about like those ADUs that need to be grandfathered in, and how are you interacting with those homeowners, or what kind of advice do you give those who have something that not, or that still needs to be formalized, so to speak?
Graded.
Yeah, no, so our amnesty program is, we did create it. Now, I think we launched it, what was it, like February 2020, right? Something like that. I mean, it was right before COVID. And so, Andrew, you may have, I just don't have a lot of knowledge right now of how it's been going on the ground. I don't think that it's been people's necessarily first thing they're thinking of at this time. So just in general, though, as everyone hopefully knows, if you don't already, there is a state law that allows homeowners to opt to have automatic amnesty for, I think it's 5 years. And that's, we would only check it for health safety. So the kind of first step of your amnesty program, and it's all, if you go to the sanjoseca.gov/ADUs, and it walks it through it really nicely. But basically you call us for a consultation. You don't even need to tell us who you are, your address. Talk through the options, and at that point, you know, we can tell people you can choose this 5-year delay and enforcement option, and in which case it'll just be a check for health and safety, or you can proceed through this amnesty program to try to get it permitted, and then go from there. So again, I just don't, you know, I don't know that we have a lot of, it's hard to use a COVID year as an example of how things are going to go on this front in particular, especially since we shut down enforcement for quite some time too, you know, so it just, I think we'll get back with the success of our amnesty program, hopefully great success of our amnesty program in a little while, but I don't have much to share right now.
No, thanks, Martina. I know it'll help a lot of people.
Great. Are there other questions from our panelists, or should we keep going through the Q&A?
One of the questions in the Q&A is talking about electric lines, and this is something that we deal with everywhere or across the state, and it's very, what we found is it's very regional how these get addressed. So wondering, one, if you're working at all with PG&E on kind of a coordinated process, or is it something that you're strictly leaving that up to PG&E to make the decisions, or you just kind of talk through how you guys address encroachments into perhaps utility easements or existing structures that are in utility easements and are looking to be converted?
So from a standpoint, if it's a true easement, you know, be a power, or let's say a power line easement, which usually in that easement has clear language that you can't build directly underneath that line. But then usually from the PG&E construction pole, let's say to the power drop or to the drop on the main home, there are requirements that you usually have to have about a 15-foot, a maximum building height per se. So you have to have a vertical wire clearance. And usually that's where we will be working with applicants, is to ensure that you have the required vertical working clearance. But if you are if your unit proposed is to be in an easement from a public utility easement or a tract development easement, usually we have to follow the language of the easement, and that's on the owner to provide us that language and to ensure it's being met as well. So it's an interesting one, but it's usually there's a clear defining line on what we can and can't ask.
And I just know from, you know, working across the state, there's a lot of local jurisdictions that don't even touch, like they just want to know where your proposed meter location is, and then they don't even talk about anything else. And they leave it all up to the utility to come in and say no. And so just, looking at, coordinated approaches and how you guys are looking at that, whether you're leaving more up to PG&E or whether you guys are doing a more comprehensive check inside, which I think is a better option. So it sounds like you're doing a little bit more than what we see elsewhere.
We definitely try. I can't say we're always perfect, but we do, like you said, we do want to see utility locations, meters and such, and then we will look at track maps that we hopefully have on record. If not, it would be with the county and hopefully at public viewing, which has been some difficulty sometimes during COVID. But we do highlight and try to advise that it's on the professionals creating the drawings to please be aware of those requirements specific to a site to help us. And then if for any reason something is gone unseen, we then would be catching it in the field through our inspection. And then hopefully from the contractor that's involved with the property could then provide experience as well to say, hey, here's some issues. We need to have some communication with the public utility service if needed, if they feel, or they can have early communication with the inspectors at the time of foundation to have any concerns.
Great. Well, I think that's time. There's a few questions left in the Q&A that we didn't get to, but you're welcome to reach out to Casita Coalition to have further discussions about state ADU law. In particular, and one of the people on the call today was from New York, who's actually working on that New York statewide ADU law and had a bunch of questions about exactly what we're doing in California. So we'll talk to you offline. There's a whole lot.
Yes, we will.
Behind this. But basically, and this answers several questions in the Q&A, it is a matter of statewide concern that every community pull its weight in the housing arena. It's no longer okay in a place where homelessness is rampant and seniors are looking at a fixed income and losing their housing or living under the freeway. It is no longer okay to assume that every city on their own can work with neighbors to solve these problems by themselves. So in California, we decided it was a matter of statewide concern that everyone should allow ADUs, and there are now statewide standards in California, which has allowed all of these local innovations to do better than the state rule. And that's really how California's addressed some of the NIMBY concerns and the equity concerns. It's no longer the case that Oakland has progressive ADU policies and Atherton does not. Right? Everyone has a level playing field. That's the advantage of the statewide law. And then cities are really knocking it out of the park in a lot of places to show how this tool is powerful at helping its residents. So thanks very much to everyone on this panel, Martina, Andrew, Fathia, for telling us about what's going on in your piece of the ADU world. I expect you'll get phone calls from people on the panel asking you weedy details about your program. So success breeds curiosity and success. And hopefully this webinar will have answered some of those questions up front. Jared, do you have anything else you want to add as part of, I guess we did do a survey. What sorts of backgrounds are folks coming from? And it wasn't surprising. We have people from a range of professional backgrounds, ADU practitioners, planners and government folks, people who work in other nonprofits, one academic, yay. And then other folks who are engaged somewhere in the ADU landscape. So thank you very much for joining us. We really appreciate your time and interest. And just as we've closed out the poll there. A few other notes. Please take a look at the Casita Coalition website. We talked about garage conversions today. San Jose is doing their standards. We've got garage conversion and finance, and now a video about seniors doing ADUs, all available on our website. Please join us next month for a really great follow-on to the San Jose conversation, where we go to, again, one of the state's largest cities, the city of Los Angeles, that has been a big leader in ADUs with the mayor leading the charge. And we will be highlighting Christopher Hawthorne, the City of Los Angeles Chief Design Officer, who's not only doing ADU innovations, but also looking at how Los Angeles can encourage other small housing forms. Upcoming events and activities. Can you guys just give me the next slide? There we go. San Mateo County, May 28th. San Mateo was an early leader in ADU regulations and in programming to make it easy for homeowners to figure out how to start. So we look forward to hearing from them Friday, May 28th. And then finally, please join us. These conversations are really important, and they help all of us do better and do more. So help more people more quickly. So please visit our website, like us on social media. You can subscribe to our newsletter that comes out twice a month and get the latest gossip on progress and innovations in ADUs. Thanks again to our sponsors and our publicity partners. I think these webinars are really exciting, and one of the most gratifying parts of it is that every time we have a pre-call for the next set of webinar panelists, the issues and questions that come up are some of the things we've talked about in the previous panel. So I think we're creating a book of best practices and lessons learned that will be really helpful, not only to jurisdictions within California, but as it turns out now, folks in other states in the US who want to know what we did and why and how it worked. So thanks all very much for joining, and please be in touch with the Casita Coalition, join a working group. We look forward to having your involvement as a volunteer coalition, and we look forward to seeing you next month. Take care. Bye-bye.